Social issue: transportation for individuals with disabilities. There are many challenges facing individuals with disabilities. When it comes to transportation, their civil rights and basic human rights are being impeded upon. Equality in transportation and mobility within the disability community plays a key role in the struggle towards freedom for all. Fact number 1. Of the nearly 2 million people with disabilities who never leave their homes, 560,000 never leave home because of transportation difficulties. Imagine living in a world where you could not board a bus or step onto a curb. You get a job, but have no way of getting to it. Missing medical appointments and everyday activities because you do not have access to transportation. Having to stay home simply because there is no method to get around. This is the reality that many people with both mental and physical disabilities face on a daily basis. People with disabilities deal with many challenges when it comes to transportation. When the Americans with Disabilities Act, known as the ADA, was signed in 1990 by President George H.W. Bush, one of its purposes was to guarantee that individuals with disabilities have equal access to transportation. The act opened up several new ways for these individuals to get around independently. This led to many more opportunities for them to expand their world. Fact number 2. The ADA requires public transportation systems to be accessible to all. This includes people who are unable to board, ride, or exit vehicles, people who are able to access vehicles but accessible vehicles are not available to them, and people who can ride accessible vehicles but their disability prevents them from getting to and from the vehicle stop. Unfortunately, this is not always the case. Since the Americans with Disabilities Act addresses public transportation only, those who do not have access to public transportation are left out, with no protections offered to them. Fact number 3. At least 12 million individuals living in rural communities, or 41% of the rural population, live in counties with no public transportation. In these counties, a form of transportation known as paratransit service is available to those who qualify with a physician request. Paratransit provides minibuses, minivans, and taxis to people with disabilities when public transportation cannot be used so they can enjoy the same level of access as non-disabled people. Under ADA guidelines, people with disabilities can request paratransit modifications, and one personal care assistant can ride with them at no extra cost. Problems that arise with this method of transportation is slow service or even a complete failure to show up, leading to frustration and missed appointments for those who rely on this service. Many individuals with a disability are not given access to livable communities. They cannot use walkways, intersections without curb ramps, and have inaccessible bus stops. Elevators or ramps may not be available to replace stairs. Many cannot use sidewalks due to obstacles blocking them, cannot cross the street due to silent pedestrian signals and fast crossing times that are not long enough to make it across. Even though the U.S. Department of Transportation, in compliance with the ADA, has regulations in place for sidewalks and crosswalks, often lack of enforcement makes streets unsafe and inaccessible to those with a disability. Under ADA guidelines, buses must have universal design features present. These include low-floor buses with ramps, floor markings, additional grab bars to hold onto, and destination signs. Also, there must be audible stop announcements and monitors that show upcoming stops. Adequate time must be given for entry and departure, and service animals must be allowed. Operators are required to properly assist individuals with disabilities. Bus travel can be frustrating for individuals with disabilities in a number of ways. Even though the modifications may be in place, often they are non-functioning and maintenance can take a long time. This can lead to the individual with a disability not being able to ride. For train and subway travel, The ADA only requires that busy key stations be accessible. This is because so many train and subway stations were built well before people with disabilities had a voice. What makes travel prohibitive is lack of elevator access, getting to the station and platform accessibility, and time between stops. Also, overcrowding makes entrance impossible. There is also nobody available to police these areas to make sure regulations are being followed. Fact number 4. The ADA doesn't regulate air travel discrimination. Air travel poses many issues for individuals with disabilities. The ADA does not regulate air travel requirements. This is done by the Air Carrier Access Act, or ACAA, that states that passenger airlines are prohibited to discriminate against people with mental or physical disabilities. Along with state and local laws, many rules and regulations are in place regarding air travel. Some of these include boarding assistance, ground transportation, accessible signage, restrooms, and service animal policies. All staff should be trained on how to provide additional services for those in need. Once again, individuals with disabilities are finding rules and regulations not being followed and no enforcement in place. Wheelchair help often takes too long, and accessible restrooms are often not available. Taxis can provide rides for individuals with disabilities, but only a small number are accessible, and discrimination often occurs from private taxi companies. Many nonprofit organizations as well as charities provide rides to those in need. Also, several community volunteers are available in certain areas. Fact number 5. Complaints can be filed with the Federal Transportation Authority Office of Civil Rights. For those who believe discrimination has occurred or rules and regulations not followed, complaints may be filed with federal authorities under the ADA National Network. Some progress has been made in transportation upgrades for individuals with disabilities, although it remains limited. Since there are so many different disabilities, there are no easy answers. More efforts must be made to ensure that each and every person with a disability has access to reliable transportation. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope you learned something of interest.